Hello, 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 everybody.
Hey,
How are
hey,
ya? Hey, here we are again. One more Thursday, one
love
more
it.
show of an amazing hero. We got an amazing hero here today. Um, some of you may not even have a clue of what is going to be shared. Of course, you don't have a clue right now, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to ask you for some pen and paper for you guys to listen to this because the special guest today, she is actually a hero. She may not call herself a hero, but she really is. And it's going to touch your heart to learn about her. I brought her on Real Talk with EVE. We talked about things that are very important for the community, the nation, the country, the world to know because what's taking place is worldwide. But I want to put her in the spotlight today so she can shine as who she is. And that is um, the face of a hero. You guys ready? You ready? You ready over there? All right, we're going to bring her up. Without further ado, welcome, Sam. Sharmila, how are you?
I am so
Hello,
well. Thank you
Sam.
so much. Hi, Augustine. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, thank you for coming on and making time out of your very busy schedule because I know you are conquering the world one survivor at a time. And people are probably saying, what do you mean, one survivor at a time? Well, we're going to, first of all, bring her up as our special guest of the face of a hero. She is a hero on this show. She is a hero today. Why? And you'll get to know why. In my heart, I love what you do, Sam, and I appreciate what you are doing, and Donardo, your husband, that to take this heaviness on, and I mean heaviness because there's a lot of it going on, right? That is commendable. So we want to put you in the spotlight today as the face of a hero. Special guest, as you see, she is the founder of Rahab's Daughter. First of all, tell us a little bit about you, Sam, or Sharmila. She wants us to call us Sam. So tell us a little bit about you, where you're from.
I am Sri Lankan by ethnic origin, Eve, and British by birth, and I've actually lived all around the world, which has been quite an interesting experience. But I currently reside in Niagara on the Lake in Canada.
And how is that place in Canada? How's that working out there?
You know, it's very cold, but as you would
Oh
expect.
no, I don't know if I want to be there now. It's cold here too.
You definitely want to come in the summer, Eve, for sure.
Okay, so then I'm you telling me think twice
Anything,
about going.
yeah,
So,
definitely after April. I mean, it's beautiful through about October, and then it tends to get colder. So not that indifferent from Chicago, but definitely a um, colder version at times. Although we've had our polar vortexes in Chicago, which have made it pretty cold too. So anyway, but
Definitely.
interestingly, for human trafficking, Niagara Falls area is very, very high, right? One of
Mm,
the highest places are coming across the border, so between the US and Canada. And there's multiple reasons for that, which include a lower drinking age on this side of the border and other things. But obviously, when we were contemplating the move to Canada, that definitely played into our decision making to be sort of in the thick of it. So we sort of landed last October and are working through it. And Rahab's Daughters Canada opened in January, and we just finished our first major sort of mission, which was to assist the U.S. team with Super Bowl. And it was a very, very interesting Super Bowl for sure. So,
yeah, I do want to talk to you about that, but we may have a new type of audience, being that we're also on a different Facebook page, different YouTube page, and now we are on Twitch TV.
wow.
Yeah, so we're on Twitch TV now, Augustine, in case you didn't know. Uh,
well, thank
so
you.
we need to bring awareness of what you and your team are doing. But first of all, Sam, what got you into doing this? I mean,
Yeah.
something either happened to you or touched your heart or
Yeah, I mean, I am a survivor of human trafficking. So I was 16 when it happened to me. And, I was a kid who really much preferred her books and her, studies to pretty much anything else. My idea of a good weekend was knitting clothes for my Barbie doll while listening to, Rick D's Top 40, which should date me quite nicely right about there. I just preferred my books, and, I was very much the introvert. And, lots of people find that hard to believe now because they're like, well, you're such an extrovert. I'm like, no, it's learned behavior. I still have to go into my little cocoon and read and hit the reset button. But it was something that was, it shaped my life, right? I mean, I was so badly bullied that I tried to commit suicide, and I was unsuccessful in doing that. I drank every pill I could find in our house, but unfortunate, or fortunately we'll say now, but at the time I thought it was very unfortunate that I started throwing up all the pills because I actually wasn't able to digest them. And so I was very, very lucky that there just wasn't it wasn't my time. And obviously God kept me to do other things. But after that I decided, well, good Lord, I can't even kill myself, right? I'm such a shame to my family that I'm going to just leave. So I ran away from home, and I was exactly the statistic that you predict. Within 24 hours of leaving home, I was lured into a brothel that I thought was a nightclub. And the first day they asked me to work the front desk and just collect cover charges. At the end of the night, they said there was something wrong with the take on the till, and if I would come upstairs so you could figure it out. And then I didn't see the light of day for quite a while. And obviously that is the type of trafficker that we call a guerrilla trafficker. And I was, forced to do things that I never dreamed would be even real. And it wasn't for several months that a customer actually helped me to leave, because he realized I was being kept against my will. But the challenge was I had nowhere to go. I had no high school education. I had no, prospects of a job. This was the only one I'd ever had. So I ended up in a labor trafficking ring, selling encyclopedias door to door. Again, this should date me because we don't even do that anymore. Right. What's an encyclopedia? But
where'd you get those at?
Exactly.
Did this happen back home, or was that here?
I was in New Zealand at the time.
Okay.
But I then came to the States and was trafficked multiple times here as well. So
and how did they transport you? I'm sorry.
No, so I wasn't transported by my traffickers. I came to live with my grandma after my parents sort of rescued me from New Zealand. But the thing is, I didn't have any treatment services or any assistance to process through what had happened. And everybody's advice was just deal with it, right? Like, you'll be fine. Just go back to life. But you can't go back to life because the trauma is so ingrained that you are waking up with nightmares. You have flashbacks. You are, you just wake up in the night terrified, having relived something in your dreams that's just not allowing you to move forward. And that PTSD is prevalent in all survivors, but that's not what we called it back then, right?
Correct.
And it was something that, nobody wanted to discuss. If you ask my parents today, they'll tell me to stop discussing it. We should not tell the story because it's certainly shrouded in shame. And
correct.
What I have learned though is that while I carry some of that shame, at the end of the day, if we don't talk about this, it's going to happen to more people. Absolutely. And if we don't do something with this, nobody's going to know how to deal with it when their child becomes a victim, right? And unfortunately, it's the second fastest growing crime globally, right? It has surpassed arms dealing and is second only to drug dealing as a crime. But it's such a difficult crime to prosecute because, as victims, we make the worst type of witnesses because our trauma is so intense that we find it hard to express it. It's difficult to have timelines around it because time and space are not something that you have control of. The days just all sort of flow together. Sometimes if it's a like Super Bowl weekend, you might be forced to be up for 2 or 3 days at a stretch, right? Till you meet your quotas. And if it's, a lot of times girls, I want to say fortunate in that I never had to work the streets. So I was, exotic enough that they could sell me to higher price clientele for much more lucrative options. But a lot of girls that I knew who weren't that did have to work the streets. And even still, those girls on the streets have quotas, right? So, sometimes it's $300 so they can come in out of the cold and $1,000 so they can come in for the night. But they're turning tricks for, 20 to 50, maybe 100. So think of the number of people that they have to serve in order to hit the quotas to come in. And it's often impossible, right? So we've saved women who haven't eaten for days on end, who we've had to put on feeding tubes because they couldn't meet their quotas, so they weren't given food, or that have been so drugged that they never ate, right? And so they would just high all the time to continue doing the work. I mean, we rescued one at Super Bowl this year who started doing crystal meth so she could stay up to stop her trafficker from raping her third grade daughter, right? So,
wow.
I mean, the way that people are treated is just so shocking, right? And I think it is so depraved that a lot of us don't want to talk about it because it's easier to turn a blind eye to the fact or say, hey, these folks want to do this. They've chosen a career in the adult entertainment industry. I want you to find me the child that says, when I want to grow up, I want to be a hooker, or when I want to grow up, I want to be a stripper. Find them for me, and I will find you people who are either living in a home where prostitution is rampant, or human trafficking is rampant, or their families are trafficking them. Because those are the only people I've ever met where this was a career path that they wanted, right? Or that they thought was their family business career path. And 83% of children born into homes where human trafficking or prostitution is happening will be abused. 83%.
Wow, that's high.
Mm-hmm. So it's definitely something that we want to look at. And human trafficking doesn't look the way it did, in the movies, right? There isn't a guy with his fedora and a feather in it wandering down the street in his, pimp coat, sort of managing girls. Well, while that certainly, still happens, the average pimp's running 6 or 8 girls, but oftentimes there's a lot of organized crime. There's a lot of other pieces to the puzzle. And unfortunately, it has also become culturally acceptable to some degree. So you look at some of the video games we play today, you actually get points for blowing up prostitutes on the side of the road. And people are getting desensitized to the atrocities that this really causes in people's lives, right? So,
and it's something that is, like you said, it's hush hush. Even on social media, you try and talk about it, and they don't allow you to talk about it. Yeah. Our politicians, our involved. Look at Epstein Island. They were supposed to divulge all the people that have been there, and they've been keeping it quiet. But then for something else that has no sense, I'm going to say, They want to print it all over the news, but something as important as this, they keep it quiet.
Well, it's a difficult situation because the people who procure sex tend to have a profile, right? And the Abolition Report actually did a study on this in 2018, and said that essentially these are often men who, and it's not just men, but the larger percentage of buyers are men, and they tend to earn six figures or above. They tend to be married with children. They tend to procure 100 miles from home, and they tend to, have a Caucasian racial profile, and obviously disposable income. Now, many of us would look around and say, those are our neighbors, right? Those are our friends. But who's talking about it? Are we talking to our dads, our granddads, our, uncles, our cousins? Are we asking them, have they ever procured sex? Have they ordered a stripper to a bachelor party? Have they been at a bachelor party where one happened, or a bachelorette party? Have they, have we talked about this as maybe not the ideal for the bachelorette party, and why it's not a good decision, right? Because whether it's a bachelor or bachelorette party, you're hiring somebody to entertain you who is probably being oppressed in some way, right? And probably isn't getting to keep all of the proceeds from that, and is probably doing this because they have no other form of income to cover whatever their situation is. But by federal definition, even if you are prostituting yourself in that way, that's still human trafficking, because if poverty is driving you to it, that's still, something that we want to help. And, ideally, instead of continuing those practices, if we were to, do something else with that, like, I'm all about having fun. I just think we can have fun not at the expense of other humans, right?
Yeah, that is, what you just said is totally an eye opener. And hopefully our audience, I won't say the word enjoying the show, but really learning to look at these things differently. That when they think of hiring a stripper for somebody's bon voyage, they're getting married. What do you call those, bachelorettes or bachelor's parties, whatever, to think twice about that, because of the information you just shared with us here, Sam. And that is so important to know, because we're not thinking like that. We're just thinking about, let's have some fun. Now, I'm not one to be at a bachelor party or a bachelorette party or go to a strip club. That's just not me. But I see that there's men and women get a kick out of going to a strip club, but not realizing, take a look at the actual victim, which is who's entertaining you, is truly a victim.
Absolutely.
It doesn't, and people don't think like that.
Yeah. Well, here's another side to things. You got college students, college girls that are looking for sugar daddies to finance their education. And then you even have websites that's called, I think it's called, I even saw, I forgot who it was.
There's a lot of them, right?
Sugar babies, sugar babies looking, to be taken care of. And I think I saw it on Nightline. Nightline had they had an article on, not an article, but they had a docuseries on it.
I mean, those are getting more and more dangerous, right? We know many girls who started off that way. They've agreed to be shipped overseas to work for a set contract, right? $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for a set amount of time, and to have their education paid for and whatever. And then they don't come back, right? And the money isn't touched in the escrow account, or it's, many of the contracts have a thing that if she doesn't withdraw it, then it goes back to the funder kind of thing. And
Correct.
The girls don't return, or they come home disfigured, or they come home in such a state from, this situation.
Traumatized.
Absolutely. They're terribly traumatized because they don't know what they're actually signing up for it. Sounds great until they get over there and realize that essentially they're just a sex slave, right? And it becomes extremely difficult, and they can't get out because they signed a contract, right? And I mean, we had recently in Illinois a case of a young lady who was brought over here from Brazil to work for a gentleman who had a 6-year-old son. His wife had died of COVID, and he didn't, he brought her over originally saying that she was going to be the nanny. Then he took her documentation and insisted that she marry him so that he would have a wife for the child. And she was fortunate enough to be able to get a call out to the Brazilian embassy, who obviously called in, assistance, and we were able to help her. And she is safe and doing well now. But, while that only lasted like 60 days for her, it was some of the most traumatic time of her life, right? Because this is a labor trafficking turned sort of, human trafficking situation. And forced marriage is something that we think doesn't happen anymore. But unfortunately, it is still, something that those sites help to facilitate, right? And it's and a lot of the young ladies coming for these things, they don't understand what they're getting into. And that's whether they're coming into the US or being shipped out of the US to other places. They think it's going to be glamorous. They think it's going to be, parties and dinners and, all sorts of amazing James Bond lifestyles. But that only happens in the movies, right? That is definitely not the reality that, this sort of lifestyle brings. It's much more sinister. There's a lot, of drug usage. There's a lot of forced behaviors that they have to do that are against what they would want to do. And it's not just young ladies anymore. It's young men as well, right? 35% of trafficking now happens with young men as well. So, I mean, the face of trafficking has changed quite a lot.
Wow. And the glamorous life is what? Isn't that how it starts to lure you in and now keep you and trap you? It is a lucrative business. Unfortunately, it's a billion-dollar industry in the human trafficking. But then I think I was in Arizona. I saw a young girl. She couldn't have been but in her 20s, and the guy looked like he was in his 50s. And she's dressed nice. She's having a great time, and that made me think: is she a victim to human trafficking? She's enjoying it right now, but isn't that how it starts?
It can be, right? That can be part of the grooming process. It can certainly start out that way. And a lot of girls think, oh, my friends are giving it away. What's the big deal if I charge for it, right? Mm-hmm. The challenge is, sure, if that's how it stays and you are the one benefiting from it completely, then it's a choice you're making and you're not in danger and you're an independent sex worker, and that's your choice. Not a choice I would make, but it's your choice to make. The challenge is that lasts for about 10 minutes because, as soon as the traffickers realize that there are independents out there and they can profit from them, they promise them all sorts of things to achieve that. And, we had a young lady that we just helped in Arizona who had 2 traffickers who were both vying for her. She had just come out on the market because she lost her job and she needed to, get help for her rent, right? And, she worked in IT previously, and so, but just hadn't been able to get a job. As you know, many IT companies have been laying off by the droves of late. And she thought, well, I'm desperate. I don't want to lose my home. So, I'll try it. And the moment that she put her ads up, she was immediately starting to be approached by traffickers who were offering her things. Some were trying, the honey approach, some were trying the stick approach, but they were all working to get her signed on. And we called her to offer up assistance, and she, at first didn't quite believe that we were for real. And then after she sat down with us, we were able to, help her. And we are now helping her with job placement options. But this is someone who obviously has prospects and was new to the industry, who thought, well, what's the big deal if I do this? And then ended up being threatened daily, right? Until she, right. So this is where it gets tricky, right? It gets really, really tricky because, there are plenty of people who are like, just decriminalize it, just let it go, just allow it to happen, and the free market will take care of it. And if we decriminalize it, they'll be able to, be free. Well, the city of Phoenix allows for you to be a sex worker. You can get a permit at the city council, and, how has that helped this young lady, right?
Yeah.
She didn't end up any better off than if, she was in a city where it was criminalized. The advantage of the decriminalization is really in the fact that survivors don't carry these on their record, right? So I, for example, have 4 prostitution arrests on my record. They're considered, crimes of moral turpitude, and they prevent me from lots of things. And, it is difficult for somebody. I mean, I'm very blessed to, have come to the place in my career that people don't think about that as part of something that they need to be concerned about, right? But in the early days, as I, applied for jobs, obviously I couldn't get any because I now had these prostitution records, even though the entire time I was being trafficked. Human trafficking isn't something that people understand. So when you try to explain it, and secondly, can you imagine being on a job interview and trying to explain it?
Right.
So
they don't think about that. That's something that you may not have chosen to do. Now you're forced to stay in it.
Yes. But
brainwashed, traumatized that.
Yeah. So decriminalizing it allows us to not force survivors to have to carry that all the way through their lives, right? And being able to expunge some of those records and things like that make a difference in the world today, right? And it is important that they can start afresh without those criminal records for these sorts of things. And that definitely is probably the largest positive for a decriminalized system when it comes to, prostitution. But certainly, I don't know that it necessarily helps to stop the trafficking from occurring the way that people think that it will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, have you ever encountered any girls? I'm sure there are quite a few that have this. They have this mindset that they want to become models, and then they get approached by some companies.
The number one way that girls get trafficked at Super Bowl, right? They answer ads to be models, cheerleaders, or photographers or whatever, and then they arrive and they get turned out. This year we just finished our Super Bowl up, and we assisted 35 women and children.
Wow, 35. Thank you.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. We wanted to talk about that, but I wanted to actually have you walk us a day, what it looks like for your team and you. I'm sure it started with you and your husband, to being boots on the ground, being at a Super Bowl. What does that look like? First, you got to prepare, right?
I mean, we start preparing immediately after the first one's finished, right? By taking stock of what went well and what didn't, so we can improve procedures and things for next year. But we have an on-the-ground team. It's generally between 12 and 25 people. The largest one we set on the ground was 55 people. And then we have a call center that sort of manages operations. So the on-the-ground team is doing all the outreach, right? So we use technology that helps us to So in my day job, I work in digital transformation, and I'm just finishing up my PhD in data science. So I'm a data person, right?
And yes, I saw that. You're all about IT.
This year, all about get that dissertation done.
Yes,
but
yes.
I'm very fortunate to work for an amazing company called Verde that supports this, and they actually help build out the software that allows us to identify which businesses are performing trafficking. And we use a variety of things to do that, and algorithms and stuff. And I don't necessarily want to get into too much detail, guys, because the traffickers don't need to know.
No, do not expose what you don't need to expose.
But it helps us identify where it's happening. And then
ranges. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Say it again.
Well, what are the age ranges of the victims?
So this year, the youngest was 6 months old. Her and her mother were being, abused, and we were able to take her out of the state that she was being abused in, and she's safe now with the baby, and we're working through some things. But mom had to run because there was no way to keep baby safe without that.
Right.
And that's a very common way that traffickers keep the coercion happening, is to impregnate girls, and then, particularly if they are the baby daddy, to then have control, right? And I'm not going to give you diapers unless you, I'm not going to give you formula unless you, I'm not going to give the baby clothes unless you, right? Wow. So we actually picked up another mom who had 2 kids, and the younger one was 3, and he had no clothes because they'd taken all his clothes. So, and was basically saying to mom, if you don't do this, there'll be no clothes for the child. So it's stuff like that they use for coercion, right? And that's some of the more pleasant coercion. There's much less pleasant coercion than that. Yeah. But, unfortunately, as we said, 83% of moms who are trafficked will have their kids trafficked, right? So they're forced
to go into. So as you were saying, the process of what it's like to get ready and prepared for Super Bowl, lead us with what that looks like. As you started saying, for those of you that are just joining in the middle of this show, The Face of a Hero, we have a true hero here that not only has a passion for it, she's a survivor, but she risked her life along with others that have that passion to help end human trafficking. And that's Sam here, Sharmila. And you just finished Super Bowl. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so every day teams go out and visit the locations that we've identified as hotspots for trafficking, whether those are businesses or street corners or, nail salons or whatever, the bus stations, the airports, all the places that victims might be being brought in from. And our operations center actually takes as many ads as we can find online, and we don't get to all of them. This year, we managed to get to just over 15,000 ads that were placed for the sale of people. And we call and text those. So we actually ended up doing over 29,000 outbound phone calls to those ads, and talking to people and texting them as well. And our outreach ended up with over 650 inbound calls of people wanting, some of them wanting help, some of them wanting to yell at us. But, basically we were able to assist 35 women and children to safety. And, ideally we would love to do that year round, but obviously, funding is always the challenge with these things. But certainly for Super Bowl, we were encouraged because we saw, our street teams that went out this year was insane. The girls were on TikTok explaining where they would be. And then the traffickers were around the corner, and the cars were in a line that went around the block, guys. And the girls were just getting put into cars as they came up for the next one. All right. And then they would just go around the block and come back and drop them off.
You're talking about customers waiting in line?
Yeah. Yeah. It was insanity. I honestly have never seen anything like it. I didn't see it live because I wasn't there, but some of our team took video of it, and I was shocked at what I saw. And, you know, obviously it's a challenge because they're not actually doing anything illegal by getting into the car, right? And the illegal part isn't happening in a way that law enforcement can arrest, right? So it's very, very difficult. And, you know, even I was frustrated in that, why isn't law enforcement doing more? And then I was talking to law enforcement, and they're like, well, what do you want us to do? There are cars lined up and girls are getting in them. It could be Uber. We don't,
right. It's hard to say.
Yeah, there's no, you know, there's no criminality to that in what we're seeing, except for the fact that we know that there is, because, you know, we've seen the other side and we know the girls and what they're saying about what's happening there and that kind of thing. But there's, you know, no way for the police to follow every car. And, you know, how do you prove this? How do you prove it isn't consensual? How do you prove it's, you know, there's so many elements, right, to making a legal case. And everyone, you know, it's the number one question I get. Well, why is law enforcement not doing more? Well, law enforcement's doing a lot. They do the best that they can every day. They don't want to see this either. But it is not as simple, because the rules for them of how to engage and how to build a case are quite difficult, right? And in that kind of environment, it's happening spontaneously, right? So it went up on TikTok Friday for where to meet on Saturday. Saturday night, all this happens, and then it's done. How do the police manage to orchestrate a sting operation for that? It's too fast, right? Yeah. It's not, they can't even get all the permits and sign-offs and everything else to achieve such a thing. And that's the challenge with these like pop-up type situations,
right,
that make it so difficult, right? And all the insinuation is there, if you know, and if you look at the videos, it's very clear, but it doesn't matter because that's not prosecutable, right? And they need cases they can prosecute to win. Right. So it's very, very challenging, and something that we as a community, in every community, need to be, you know, telling our social media outlets that we don't want such ads up there. We you know, want these taken down. And the more people who report these things as they see them online, the better chance we have at getting them removed, right? So this one started out on TikTok, but ended up on LinkedIn and reposted to Facebook and et cetera, et cetera. And then we were all, you know, pushing those companies to take it down by reporting them and asking them to be blocked and that kind of thing. But everyone has to do that. Whenever you see such a thing, you've got to report it, guys. It's not good enough to say that's someone else's problem, I'm not going to get involved, because it requires more people getting involved before we can do something about this.
Right. And I just read an article, what you mentioned about arrest and it being decriminalized in Arizona. This is brought to you by Fox 10. Nearly 350 arrests made during human trafficking sex crime operation in Phoenix.
Yeah, but it's not decriminalized in Arizona, only in the city of Phoenix. Yeah. So the challenge is that all of Arizona, it's still a criminal activity. And I mean, there are still states in which it's a felony to be in prostitution. Can you imagine a young girl who's a human trafficking victim who gets a felony count of this and then has to live with that felony for the rest of their lives? They can't vote. They can't buy a weapon. They can't, you know, there's lots of can'ts, and certainly can't get a job is at the very top of that. So, certainly states with felonies, if you live in a state where prostitution is a felony, please, I beg of you, write to your congresspeople, write to your senators, write to your local, legislators, because that is a huge problem, recovery and reintegration, because it is extremely difficult for them to start over with a felony.
So you wouldn't be able to get that felony expunged?
It depends on the state, and it depends on the situation. Certainly, federally, there are options now to get those things expunged, but every state has its own, laws and regulations, and not all of them, especially the felony states, many of them don't allow for those expungements. The misdemeanors definitely are expungible pretty much everywhere, but the felonies are harder. So it's just easier if we can stop the conviction before it happens.
Well, I think that even trying to educate, I know it's difficult because it's even trying to educate the parents on this and letting the parents know how much, this is going on. It's even the reason I had mentioned about the girls, my daughter's into modeling, and one of the things that I would not want her to believe that, Dad, I want to go to Europe, and I got an opportunity here to be a model in that, and I right away, the red flags go up in that.
I tell parents every day, if your child is interested in modeling or photography, or first of all, I recommend Actors and Models for Christ, because they're probably the best option for those sorts of things, because they do try to protect their kids. But if your kid gets any kind of opportunity in any other state or whatever, if you can't go with them, or some adults can't go with them, please do not let them go. Please, because you can't fix it after the fact.
Oh, absolutely.
So for all that is holy, please, please, please send a trusted adult with them, or don't let them go. And if you are within the modeling and dancing and all those different scenes, and you see parents who are hypersexualizing their children, please report it, because familial trafficking is a big thing. It's a very lucrative thing. A couple of Super Bowls ago, we met a young lady. She called our hotline multiple times, and she only wanted to talk to me, and she was absolutely irate. I mean, she was screaming at every member of everything. The young lady was super angry. She happens to be one of the world's best midget porn stars. Yes, that's it. But she does it not because she wants to, but because her family has told her that they will starve to death and wither away if she doesn't do this. They've had her doing it for a very long time, and she doesn't know how to leave, right? She doesn't know how to stop it. She's super angry. She wants help. She still calls every once in a while, but she can't figure out how to get out. And she's too coerced by her family to take a chance on walking out the door, right? Because the mental manipulation is so great. And this is the challenge, right? Familial trafficking is very, very difficult because the relationships are very intertwined. And a lot of times the parents are involved, but sometimes it's aunts, uncles, grandparents, right? We met a group who we helped at the last Super Bowl who had been brought over from Guatemala as children, all sold by their families into labor trafficking that turned into sex trafficking. So like interfamilial trafficking is something no one wants to talk about because it's heinous, right? What's worse than selling your child for money? But it's still a prevalent thing, and it's not something that only happens overseas. It happens right here as well, because poverty, the need for survival is huge. And so obviously, if it's death or sell my child, then sometimes sell my child is better than death in the minds of these folks. The thing is, there is help available that people don't have to make that decision. And we just need to make sure that people know that that is available so they don't have to make that decision, right?
Yeah, and this information that you're bringing us here is so important to share. Parents, quit playing the blinded eye that it can't happen to mine. You
Correct.
may be surprised that it's already happening.
No, for
That
sure.
molestation is huge within familiar.
One of our staff members at Rahab's daughter was trafficked right out of church. Right out of the church. Mm-hmm. So don't think that you're immune. Her, in this family, mom was an educator and dad was a social worker. Certainly educated to the signs, which is why they were able to figure it out fast. But that didn't make them immune to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's super important to know the signs, because if you recognize it ahead of time, it's always better than later. And, if your kids are mad at you because you won't let them play Fortnite or whatever this week's game of the week is, or that's okay, guys. They'll get over it. Trust me. They will not get over being lured into abuse. They won't, right? It will shape and scar them for their lives. The inability to play their video games or talk on the phone or send Snapchats. Yeah, they'll be mad at you for a while. Sucks to be you, but far better than the alternatives that happen if you don't take this. And, if you go on our website, you'll find that there are technology and trafficking trainings for parents where they can come and learn how to be safe, how to understand the internet slang that their kids are using in order to, do this. And it's all free to the public. So you just have to sign up, because we believe, in donors sponsoring this so that everyone gets the information, and it shouldn't be only if you can afford it, right? Everyone should have this information. So, come sign up, call me, call the hotline if you need help. We help parents whose kids are missing and have been thought to be being trafficked, and we have a support group for that. But I would prefer that you don't need that support group. I prefer that we nip it in the bud before you need that support group.
Before it happens. Education is so vital.
It's critical. It's
critical. Very, very critical. And right now, for such a time as this, we still go and enjoy this Super Bowl game, not knowing what is really happening at the Super Bowl game. So, while you're spending your thousands of dollars and you bring in your kids, somebody else's kid is being trafficked at the same game you're at.
And I want to make it clear. The problem is not the game or the Super Bowl or the sporting event, right? The problem is the people and how they choose to spend their entertainment dollars, right? Because this happens at the Olympics, it happens at Super Bowl, it happens at the Formula One, it happens at large conventions, the Ryder Cup, the Waste Management Golf, it's not the event itself. It's the fact that when you bring a bunch of people together into a city and they have disposable cash and they don't understand the impacts of the entertainment choices they're making, that's the problem, guys, right? So I am not a sports fan, but I do love the Formula One. And, I don't think we should stop the events, or that the events themselves are the, issue here. Right. I definitely think that the event organizations can assist in this, and many of them do. But it's more important that we educate the public, right? I was super happy to hear this week that Marriott is, creating a CSAM situation in which child sexual material will not be available if you're staying at a Marriott, right? So they're going to block it from people being able to access it. I think that's amazing.
That is awesome. Well, kudos to Marriott, and I hope many others jump on the wagon.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And
we're putting a call out right now, Sam. We're pulling in a call out right now. If you happen to work at these hotels, push the envelope. Push it so that they can do this. Be yourself aware of what's really going on. Educate yourself of everything that Sam has shared with us here about what Rahab's daughter stands for and why she's doing this. It's commendable. She is a hero, her and her team. And so it touches my heart. And what I mean when I say, while people are playing or having fun at these games, others are having fun in a different way. It could be your daughter's friend
No, I mean, I
Neighbor.
was forced to work multiple Super Bowls, which is why it's particularly important to me. And the amount of stripping engagements I had in one day, the amount of like, types of things that were expected are heinous, right? And there's just no reason. There's no reason that your Super Bowl watching experience needs to include the purchase of humans in any way, right? Like, I'm not talking about purchasing your catering staff. I'm talking about, purchasing people for, adult entertainment purposes or labor trafficking purposes. If you're going to have people come and work your parties, pay them a fair wage and treat them with respect. And there's nothing wrong with having a big Super Bowl party and enjoying the game with your friends. The challenge comes in when you choose to, underpay people, which happens all the time at Super Bowl parties, right? How can I pay them under the table in cash or whatever? And then they end up in labor trafficking situations, or, hiring strippers and those sorts of things for these parties. It's just unnecessary, right? And let's be fair, a lot of the parties are not just for the stripping.
Correct. Besides the human trafficking on the, let's say, that is bad enough, but then it's the taking their organs. You know what I'm talking about is when
organ
they
trafficking.
kidnap these kids for their organs, because they're older and they're dying or they're sick and they need a liver, they need this, they need that, and that's
the situation with organ trafficking is in North America, we are very rarely the ones who are cut up for our organs. We're mostly the ones who are purchasing the organs, right? And I personally can't imagine how horrible it must be to have somebody who's passing away in front of you awaiting a transplant. This must be a very traumatic thing for families to go through. And I have a ton of empathy for how difficult that must be. But, the purchasing, to sell your child or your sister, or your brother or whatever, to give up an organ, I just can't imagine how desperate the situation must be.
Yeah.
But it's so desperate that they're willing to do it. The challenge is that, this person now didn't have a choice in the matter, right? Like, there are lots of what we call domino surgeries for people to give organs and sort of swap, right? And this is a very legal way of doing things through where everybody is, doing it from free will. And I am all about that, right? I think that you have to be very magnanimous to be able to do that. And I commend every single person who's willing to give up their organ to save a life. If you have a choice, that's awesome. If you don't, it's awful. And we have to keep an eye out for these sorts of things because people shouldn't be giving up those things unless they've had a complete choice in it, right? And as difficult as it is to see your loved one suffer, we still need to be saying, hang on a minute, this is wrong, right? But, at the end of the day, if you know somebody on the transplant list and they suddenly, are headed in to be fixed and you can't imagine how that happened, please call the Human Trafficking Hotline and report that, because it is really important, because we, as I said, are the recipients of most of the organs in North America. We are definitely not being cut up for them.
Yeah, wow. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation with you, Sam, and enlightened us with a lot of pertinent information, bringing awareness to human trafficking. And as you see on the bottom of the screen, go to rahabsdaughters.org if you want to be part of the solution. Don't be part of the problem. Also, we're taking donations. This is a non-for-profit organization, and what the team does take time, tool, and talent and skills. But most of all, do you consider yourself that you're also or the team is also putting themselves at some type of risk in doing this?
I mean, we get plenty of death threats every year as we do these things. So there's certainly some amount of risk, but everybody is, we try to limit those and do our best to keep everyone safe. And praise the Lord, so far, any injuries have been very minor.
Wow. Well, commend you and the team for being boots on the ground, sharing us with this very important information. Share this interview with others. Share this interview with your family. Parents, open your eyes up to it can happen to you. It can happen to your child. It can happen to your neighbor. Remember, familiar things. That's how it all starts. Someone you know, someone you trust can be that next person that's trafficking somebody they know as well.
Right.
So here's the hotline, 833-463-9329. Sam, what else would you like to share in the last minute or so that the audience needs to know?
I mean, thank you all for listening. Please, if you don't know how to talk about this, reach out. We would love to help you. But the most important thing is to get everybody educated about what the signs are and how you can prevent them.
Wow. Well, thank you, Sam. We're going to bring more awareness of human trafficking. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you in Canada. But now that you tell me it's colder, I may not go anytime sooner. But that's why we have coats. The mission is what's important. Whether it's cold or not, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Absolutely, yes. Maybe you can come in May as we open up our first Canadian safe house. Maybe
there you go. Definitely. So guys, donate, be part of the solution. Touch your heart that if you say today I was going to spend $50 to just touch up my nails, I want to do those $50 and hold off this week and not do my nails. I want to donate to Rahab's daughter because that's somebody's daughter that's being trafficked. And so let's make a difference, guys. Together we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
And we got to be part of the solution, guys. Enough of the problems, enough of the heinous crimes that's taken place as we speak right now. And let's be the change that we want to see. Sam, thank you so much for joining us here today. This won't be the first only. This won't be the last. So we're going to bring you back with more stories to share. Thank you once again, Sam. You take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Wow.
Wow was right.
Sam, this isn't the first I hear Sam. This isn't the first I interview Sam. It's an honor and a humbled experience to be part of an organization such as Rahab's daughter. They're in other countries. They're in Canada now. You guys heard her. And I asked her about being in Mexico. Well, it's a lot more risky, a lot more dangerous for them to do because unfortunately, government is part of the problem too. Just keeping it real, guys. Just keeping it real. And so be part of it. Be part of the calling center. They're also now a prayer group Saturday mornings that they come together to pray for them. And I appreciate that about Sam, that she's open to say she's a believer. She believes in God. She knows, she walks it. As a survivor, she knows what she's talking about. She's been there and done that. It's not that she doesn't know. It's not like she read it from a book.
Yeah, she experienced it firsthand, and unfortunately, she's experienced it. And but the good thing is that she turned it into a positive, and now she's fighting against it. And one of the things I did want to bring up was how many kids do we have coming in across the border down by Mexico and Texas that are being trafficked?
Not just kids, women. And as I asked her in my other show, she did say that the numbers have increased, the human trafficking, thanks to the borders being open. So talk to your legislators. Go down to the White House and thank our president. Okay? I'm just keeping it real, people. No one's out there protesting. Why are these borders open like that?
Yeah, they don't want to talk about human trafficking. They do not, because they are part of the problem. Again, with this whole Epstein Island, they are part of the problem. They just sweep it under the rug.
Well, on that, I don't know if you know, there is an exclusive reported today naming the names, the final batch of documents containing the salacious allegations related to Jeffrey Epstein associates, including Prince Andrew, will finally be made public after dozens of John and Jane Does agree to the unsealing. So watch that, follow that. Be part of the solution, guys. And on that note, you guys know how to reach us. If you have a hero you want us to interview, go and call us at 773-809-0106. Go to the website, thefaceofahero.com. And we thank you for supporting us. If you want to contribute and donate to this show, by all means, give us a call. Let's be
Absolutely.
part of the solution, people. I was thinking we got places to go, people to see, so at least I do. On that note,
Yes.
every Thursday at what time, Austin?
8 p.m. Central Standard Time.
So catch us live every Thursday, 8 p.m. on our YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. And now we're on Twitch TV as well. So thank you, guys. We appreciate you. Take care. Gotta go. Nos vemos, Agustin. I know you got things to do, right? So
yes.
Vámonos para.
Good night. Good night.
I'll see you. Wait, I gotta point this way. I'll see you till next time, guys.
Yes.
Well, take care.
Absolutely.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Yeah.